So welcome. It's good to see some familiar faces and some new names. So thank you. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Megan Gergen. I am the Outreach and Training Coordinator here at Journey Center for Safety and Healing. And thank you for being at the first of 4 of our Lunch and Learn series here at Journey Center, talking about services that really highlight the work we do with youth during Child Abuse Prevention Month. If you want to learn more, you can check out our website. I can send that information out later this afternoon. And then I will also be sending a follow-up email. So if anyone has questions, I will gladly answer those here this afternoon. So without further ado, just a little bit about who we are. This is a little bit of our history, and I think it's important because some folks still know us by our old names. So I'm sure some of you have known us before as Temple and Bellflower Domestic Violence Center, most recently Domestic Violence and Child Advocacy Center, or DVCAC. So all of those places are us. We are just now Journey Center for Safety and Healing because CANOPY Child Advocacy Center, that you will get to hear about next week, has branched off and is now their 501c3. So it is a really good thing. And it just means this work that we're doing with and for kids is expanding. So come back next week and learn more about the advocacy services and the services that Journey has at CANOPY. But I would love to know, and just a quick poll, there's not going to be too many of you, those of you that were at our kickoff event last week. I know I kind of did a lot of questions, but I have two questions for you all. Have you all worked with Journey Center either since or before it was Journey Center? And then were you aware that we rebranded and that we changed our name from DVCAC to Journey Center for Safety and Healing? Awesome. So it looks like people were aware too. Some yes, some no. Okay. Awesome. So it's about 50-50 for both. Although were you aware of the name rebrand? Great. Yes, most people are aware. For the people that weren't, now you know, and now you can take that information back to your coworkers. So Journey Center for Safety and Healing, we work with anyone who's experienced domestic violence or child abuse at any point in their lifetime. We want folks to know that they, regardless of who they are, what they look like, what their relationships look like, that they deserve safe, healthy relationships. And so that's really our mission and our goal of what we want to do in our work. And we do it through kind of 6 core values. So resiliency, understanding the resiliency that folks that have experienced abuse and a trauma have, and really highlighting that. Empowerment. So we will never tell anyone what to do, a client, a victim, what to do. We're going to empower them to make their own decisions. Every single thing that we talk about this month in our Lunch and Learn service is through a lens of safety. We want folks to be safety. No, we don't. We want folks to be safe. And so when we're meeting with the client for 5 minutes, when we're working with a client for an hour, we're always doing at least a little bit of safety planning with them to come through that lens and to work for that perspective. And then also really recognizing the inclusion aspect, that victims, survivors, our staff, our advocates all have different lived experiences, different cultures, and we welcome that, right? Recognizing different people for who they are, for their cultures, like I said, for lived experience, really can only impact this work in a positive way. Integrity, we do the best work we can in the best way we can, and then connectedness. So I know working with some community partners on here, knowing what you all do really helps strengthen not only our work, but it helps strengthen that safety of the clients that we all are working with, whether you're working with them now or we're both working with them at the same time. Here's a little fun thing for you all. So we here at Journey Center have a mascot, and our mascot is a hedgehog. So you all will see us post on National Hedgehog Day, or our staff really rally around this symbol to take care of themselves, right? Hedgehogs represent protection, resourcefulness, they're a symbol of wisdom. And what I love is they curl up when they need to center themselves. So that's kind of another little fun lens that we do our work through. But enough about Journey as a whole. I know you all are here because you want to learn about our services and what we do. So we break our services down kind of in 3 lenses: safety, healing, and breaking cycles, right? And so we'll talk about these more in depth. But it's important that that's at the core of what we do. Safety for clients, for their family, for their children, healing from that trauma that someone's experienced. And then it wouldn't be doing the work in the best way possible if we weren't also, working to break cycles for folks, working to break those generational domestic violence, generational child abuse, and really do that safety and healing for generations to come. And why is this important? This is not a training, this is not stats, but especially during Child Abuse Prevention Month, it's important that we know why we're here and why we're highlighting these services, because we know that more than 15 million children in the US live in homes where domestic violence has happened at least once. We know that either domestic violence or child abuse, those children that grow up witnessing abuse are at a higher risk for health problems as adults. So if you have not checked out our toolkit yet, I would encourage you, because that talks about protective factors. It talks about the ACEs and things that we can do to combat those, right? Because we know if a child has experienced, ACEs, the more ACEs they've experienced, the more trauma, the more health problems they have, the more mental health problems. And it's also really important to know, and we hear this all the time, but 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men have been victims of severe physical violence. So having these conversations and you all being here is one way to combat and hopefully lower those statistics. And so Journey Center, by the numbers, right? Who do we serve? What do we serve? So we really, in the past, and this is the fiscal year, those are the people that we've served and the people that we've, worked with over the course of the past year. Over 5,000 interventions through our 24-hour helpline, over 300 clients in our shelter, over 3,000 victims of intimate partner violence supported through the judicial process, both criminal and civil, helping them find safety. And then doing what I do, right? I would be remiss if I didn't mention the work that I do talk in some of my coworkers. Over 2,000 people educated about family violence and healthy relationships. So that's important. Here is where we are. I think whoever made this map did a really good job. But looking at, so those purple is where we provide that advocacy, the justice system advocacy. So we're Domestic Relations Corps, Cleveland Heights, South Euclid, Lyndhurst. I won't read the whole list, but it's important to recognize that we do work throughout Cuyahoga County. That is kind of our restriction. And then recognize that sometimes we do work outside of the county if that's what folks need. But that's Cuyahoga County is primarily where we serve victims and where we see victims. And so our helpline, this is probably the most important service that we have. So our 24-hour helpline is answered 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Folks can call, folks can text, and people can now live chat at our website. So, things are opening up, but in the pandemic, having that text and that chat was really, really helpful. And what we would safety plan around is telling folks, maybe text while you're in the bathroom, text while you're on your afternoon walk, because we understand that not everyone can pick up a phone and call. And we really want people to be met where they're at and be able to provide those advocacy services in the best way possible. Our helpline, advocates can assist with resources, referrals, just general information. You, Natalie, you're the one, sorry, I'm going to pick on you, but you call and you say, I have a client and they're in Lakewood and I know you have an advocate, but I'm not quite sure who that person is. You can call and that helpline advocate should be able to connect you to Janice, right? Either through directly to her voicemail or give you that number so that you can call her or you can connect your client with Janice, right? Crisis intervention and safety planning. So if someone is calling and they have just witnessed abuse or just experienced abuse, or maybe they're at a friend's house and they're not sure where to go or what to do, we can really walk with a client through that crisis and help them safety plan the next afternoon, the rest of the week, and the rest of the month, and really plan next steps. Okay, do you want to file a police report? Do you want to file a protection order? You don't want to do either of those things. Okay, how can we keep you safe so that you can continue the progress on your journey, right? Legal information, options, intakes. If you don't remember anything else I say today, remember that this 24-hour helpline exists. This is intakes for shelter. This is intakes for therapy. We can get someone connected to DD classes or their advocate. And I think it's important to highlight too that and I mentioned this, but our helpline is for victims. Our helpline is for family, for friends, for caseworkers. It is anyone who needs assistance navigating domestic violence or child abuse, again, through information or through crisis intervention and safe planning. Our emergency domestic violence shelter is a confidential emergency domestic violence shelter. It is the only dedicated domestic violence shelter. And what that means is we work with the other shelters who do have victims of domestic violence, but every single person that walks through our doors is leaving an unsafe and abusive situation. And so it's really important to recognize that our youth advocates, our shelter advocates, the people that are answering the helpline are in this work every single day. It is for adults and children who are in need of immediate relief, for safe is not home, or home is not safe, excuse me. And I want to emphasize adults. It does not mean women. It means women, men, trans folks, gender expansive folks. It is for anyone who needs services, right? When someone comes to our shelter, we really work to meet all of the needs of someone. So what typically happens? Someone calls our 24-hour helpline. We'll do about a 20-30-minute intake, sometimes maybe a little bit longer, depending on that client. And we really are going to ask them, we want to make sure that shelter is, one, the best option and is a safest option. So for case managers or caseworkers on this call, sometimes it's good to preface, like they're going to ask you about where you live, where your partner lives, where your partner's family lives. That's not because they're just being nosy, but it's because we want to make sure that shelter is safe. We don't want someone to come to shelter and realize that their partner's mom lives next door. That's not going to be safe, right? We also really work to, so someone does an intake, we have space, it's an appropriate fit. We'll talk to them about how to get to shelter. We will then, once they're immediately in shelter, if they need clothes, if they need hygiene stuff, if they need just to sleep for a little bit, that's what we do. And then they're assigned a family advocate who's going to work with them on housing, employment, connection to other services to make sure that when they leave shelter, that they are safe and that they're in a spot to feel empowered to do that work on their own. We'll stay connected with them. Absolutely. But we really want to set folks up for success and recognizing that shelter is not for everyone and that people don't want to stay at shelter forever. We have justice system advocacy. So we work, you all saw those courts in the previous, throughout Cuyahoga County. So we have dedicated advocates in each court. And the reason for that is Janice knows Lakewood. Deborah knows South Euclid. The court system is similar, but having our advocates in those courts that can know, here's what the judge is like, here's what the prosecutor's like, here's what this is like, is super, super helpful. So our advocates typically will get client information from our helpline. And so what that looks like is if there's police in South Euclid show up to a scene and it's a domestic violence situation, they will call our helpline and they will give us information about the victim and the abuser. That information will get passed on to our advocates. So in this case, South Euclid, Deborah Ben. Deborah will then try to reach out to that client and say, hey, this is what I do. Do you have any questions? If we're unable to reach them on the phone, we'll try to show up to court and we'll try to connect with them to talk about safety, again, empowerment, and what do they want to do? Do they want to continue with the charges? Do they want to file for a protection order? Do they just want their abuser out of their home? Do they want to leave the situation completely, right? If they choose to go through with the court system, we might answer, here's what a pretrial is, here's what sentencing is, here's what pre-sentencing is. And we might answer that same question over and over again. That's okay. I always said when I was an advocate that you can, like, here's what I do not want you to do, right? Don't yell at the judge, don't yell at the prosecutor. If you need to after or before court, you need to yell around me, you need to cry, you need to scream in my office. That's what I'm here for, to help you process those emotions. And I'm here to be with you and beside you throughout that court process, because we understand that it's scary. So CANOPY, that you will learn a ton more about next week, but CANOPY is what we do in our advocacy at CANOPY is really working with those children who have been impacted and who experience sexual abuse. So our advocates are not family advocates, they are child advocates. So what that means is they are working for the best interest of that child that has experienced abuse. We will work with the families, absolutely. We're going to provide education and support. about what is a forensic interview? Why is this prosecutor answering questions? What's a plea? What happens if we go to trial, right? And they attend a scheduled like weekly multidisciplinary team meeting to really work together. So it's from that multidisciplinary teams, that MDT, to help make sure the child is safe, right? We work for Journey in the same way that we have advocates in domestic relations court or Lakewood. We do not work for that system. We work with that system to provide safety for that child or for that victim. And if anyone has any questions, I don't know that I said this at the beginning, please put them in the chat. I want you all to know our services. So if I'm not being clear, if there's something I didn't answer, ask away. But Child Advocate or Canopy, we'll talk about more in depth next week. So stay tuned. Safe and Sound Supervised Visitation Center. So this we will learn about on the 28th. So if you want to come then, or if you're available, Rena Darling, who is our amazing Supervised Visitation Manager, will be talking to us in more detail about the Visitation Center. But what our Visitation Center is we recognize that even in abusive situations or when it's not safe for maybe a child to visit one parent on their own, we know that relationship is still important. So what happens, and typically we'll see families that are court ordered through juvenile court or domestic relations court at times, but they'll come, they'll do an intake, and they'll get a time. What the visit looks like typically is, so victim and child will come, right? Residential parent, we'll say victim for sake of clarity, will come. They'll come through one door. 15 minutes later, that abuser or non-residential parent will come through another door where there is security. They will never see one another. They will be separated the whole time, and they both have separate lobbies. Then our monitor will come out, get the child, and take them to the room, the gym, wherever it is, to have that visit with that abuser. If it's a court ordered, they're taking notes or they're answering questions, but really they're just kind of like a fly on the wall, and they'll correct behavior as needed, right? If an abuser is saying, well, tell me about your mom. Is she dating anyone? What's going on? The monitor's there to like squash that and make sure that that visit is happening safely and appropriately. We also offer safe exchanges. So maybe you'd rather have an exchange here where there is staff, there's trained staff, or you have a client that would rather this, rather than meeting at the McDonald's parking lot where there's no one to really monitor and make sure it's safe. Same thing, victim comes, 15 minutes later, abuser comes, victim leaves, 15 minutes later, abuser leaves. And the reason for that time gap is, again, safety. We don't want anyone being followed. We don't want anyone, everything we do is through a lens of safety. Latina Domestic Violence Project. So this is really similar to our Justice System Advocacy Project, but it's really offered to that lens of cultural humility and cultural competence. And so we have two advocates who are Spanish-speaking bilingual advocates that are going to offer the advocacy services, making sure folks understand the court system. They also really focus on immigration. So if you have a client who's working on a visa or is undocumented, our advocates are really, really helpful and really, really knowledgeable about that system. So we also offer a support group, weekly support group in Spanish. Right now, that support group is meeting in person. I believe that they are still limiting the number of folks that can come because of COVID, but that may change over time. So if you have a Spanish-speaking client or an immigrant client that you need assistance with, that our Latina Domestic Violence Project and our advocates are going to be really, really helpful for those folks. Trauma therapy, which plug you all will hear from Samantha, who's one of our therapists. She's been here for a while and she is fantastic. She's really helpful at helping me reframe. So that tells you how good they all are. But we're going to be hearing from her on the 21st if you want to learn more about our trauma therapy services. But our trauma therapy, pretty simple, is for anyone ages 4 and up. That is pretty much the only requirement. So our therapists are really good at understanding trauma. They are really good at understanding dynamics of child abuse. They really understand the dynamics of domestic violence and how that shows up for a person. And so they're going to be working with people through trauma-focused trauma-focused cognitive behavioral, EDMR, art therapy, and really meeting that client and that victim where they're at to help them progress, help them understand, recognize, and work through that trauma. Now, we don't have group therapy currently. I keep leaving it up here because I'm willing it to come back, and maybe hopefully, knock on wood, we'll be able to offer it again sometime in the near future with COVID and whatever the world looks like in another 6 months. But our groups are really neat and they're really cool. So they're a closed group. If someone doesn't want to come to maybe individual therapy, they're not quite ready, those group therapy sessions are great. How folks get connected to our trauma therapy is they can call the helpline. Now, it's really important to note we do not want case managers calling to do an intake. We want the client to call and do that intake because we want the client to be ready. We don't want them to feel forced. We want them to really talk us through on that intake, what they're hoping to get out of therapy, etc. I will say that we do have a wait list currently. So if you have a client that needs to get into therapy right now, it is an immediate need, you can still call our helpline and we'll get you some referrals or some other places where they can receive therapy. But if it's someone that's, not really, I don't say not in a rush, but not in a super rush, but just wants therapy, in a little bit, they can call and do an intake on our helpline. Support groups. So support groups are ran by our justice system advocates. Right now, they are meeting via Zoom. Technically, there's a West Side and an East Side option. We are in the process of getting those back in person for the West Side and the East Side. And then we're going to keep the virtual option because what our advocates have said is that it's really, really helpful, right? And you didn't have to drive here. You don't have to drive back to work when you're done. You can hop on a Zoom call and do what you need to do. Now, our Zoom support groups, we do have to be mindful of extra safety so that there's not an abuser off screen doing something or saying something. So we do a little bit more screening and a little bit more safety planning with those clients. But they are not therapy, they are support group, peer-led support group. And so while our advocates are there kind of leading and facilitating, they are not driving the conversation. They're really letting clients navigate and guide where we go, what we talk about, and what we do in group. It is free, right? So the group may be consistent of folks that have been out of their relationship for a couple years. There may be someone in group who's still in that, like, I'm in the relationship, but I want to leave, but I'm going to go back. And then there might be people in the group that are still in those relationships. So it does not matter at what stage a person is in their, their process or in their relationship. We just want to make sure that folks know that they're supported and that they're not alone, right? Domestic violence education classes. So these are not therapy. These are not a support group. This is really education focused. And so what happens, it's a 7-week program. If I know some of you all have been to my trainings before, but so what we talk about maybe in an hour, they're going to spend 2 hours talking about what is domestic violence? What is a healthy relationship? What is the impact of domestic violence on children? Safety planning, and really giving folks the knowledge to take with them as they navigate, relationships, life, whatever. A lot of these referrals, I will say, come from DCFS, Children and Family Services, but they are not required. If you have a client or if you have a client that would like to come to classes, call our helpline and we'll get you connected with Dina to set up a time to do an intake. Our classes are happening in person, so we are limiting those sessions again right now because of COVID. Again, I'm not sure what that will look like in 2, 3, 4 months. So always check back or always call to ask questions. I do want to note that there is a $20 registration fee for our classes. So you will notice that that is the only time I have said about a service costing money. The reason for that is because they are a closed group, we really want to make sure that people are coming, that are committed, and so that they're not going to no show and take up a space that could have been for someone else that needs that class. And then training and awareness, right? This is what I spend a lot of my time doing. It's how I know some of you on this call, coming to your organizations, talking about our services, talking about domestic violence, child abuse, dating violence, stalking, and other related issues. We are happy to come As we have staff, I should say that we do have limited staff people that can come to a resource table or come and talk with you all. But if you want me to come 20 minutes to a staff meeting and talk about our services, you all will have my email, but we are happy to do those things so long as it fits into my schedule. And then professional trainings too, right? So we have 2 trainings coming up this month on April 15th and April 29th, talking about child abuse, knowing the signs, and child abuse, knowing how to respond. Those are free 1-hour trainings, so you can come to those if you would like. If I'm saying this out, so you all are gonna have to hold me accountable, I'm hoping to have a summer training series. So those will likely be paid trainings, but we do offer CEUs. So you can come to those, or if you would like us to come and talk to staff, we can do professional trainings. There is oftentimes a fee, just so like I can keep having a job. So thank you in advance. But we really want people to know how to intervene, right? The question all the time, why do victims stay, or what can I do? We can answer those questions and really walk you all through what to do, specific scenarios, etc. And so that's kind of it. We're coming towards the end, but we get these questions a lot. And if anyone has any other questions, please put them in the chat. So do you accept donations? We absolutely accept donations. So always accept monetary donations. If you're looking to do a drive at work or you want to donate, check out our website. We have our wish list up there. Gift cards are always super helpful. So if clients need groceries or to furnish their new home, we can get that for them. But check out our website to see what donations we're looking for currently. Can I volunteer? So unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we did suspend our volunteer program. I do not have a date about when it will be back up and running. So if you're looking to volunteer, you can still do an application on our website, but it might be a minute before that program is back up and running. But we still do Meals That Heal. So if you or an organization want to provide a meal to shelter, you can call and we can get you connected how to do that. There are fee for service. Like I said, all of our services are free with the exception of domestic violence education classes. Do we offer legal services? I think this is an important question. So we have advocacy, but our advocates are not lawyers. And so what that means is we can talk to clients about what the process looks like, what might happen, what could happen if they chose option A or option B, but we cannot provide legal advice. And we do not have staff attorneys, but we do have attorneys that we work with that can answer those questions, that can help clients file for divorce, file for protection order, etc. And then how confidential are Journey Center services? Our services are 100% confidential. If you have a client that is concerned, I always say, give the helpline a fake name, right? You do not have to answer anything that you don't want to do. There is an exception at times when there's child abuse or someone is seriously threatening to harm themselves or someone else. We do have some of those limitations. But what you say to us, what you say to me, and what you say to our other advocates or what your clients say stays with us. So, for example, you refer a client to Karen in Garfield. You have a client that's going through the legal system. We can only give you information if there is a release of information. And even if that client says, hey, can you not tell my caseworker XYZ, then we're not going to tell that client, or we're not going to tell you what that client said or did. Now, we may talk with them about why it would be good or the pros and cons, but we're never going to do anything. Even when we make a Children and Family Services report, for example, most of the time we're talking to the client about why, about the implications, and we're inviting them, or at least I often would invite them to sit with me through that process. And then here's all that we have going on. Like I said, I will email out our toolkit when this is done. We have a week of action coming up next week. So follow us on social media, send those messages of support to children who've experienced violence or adults who've experienced violence of children, abuse of children, and give them a message and something that you would want them to know. Wear blue on Wednesday, take a selfie, tag us, send us a message, get your department or your organization, take a group photo. And then when someone says, say, why are you wearing blue? You can say to promote child abuse awareness and to prevent child abuse. Philanthropy Friday, Speak Up Saturday, have a conversation with someone you know about child abuse and what a healthy childhood is. And then every Thursday, I hope to see you all again for Lunch and Learn series, child abuse trainings. And then you all can join us on every Tuesday. We're going to be talking about another aspect. So that's where folks can ask questions. We'll have some fun polls and those sorts of things. So we are at time. Feel free, if you do not, but you want to follow us on social media, scan that fancy little QR code and it will get you connected to all of our social media accounts, as well as if you want to donate, if you want to call the helpline, if you want to read our newsletter, all of that information is there. So I will say thank you all very, very much for being here. Thank you, Natalie. Good to see your faces. Please join us again. And that's it. Thanks so much, everybody.